morning and welcome to the number 6 episode of our July series of webinars on the New Zealand Hemp Industries Association. Today we're doing fibre with regard to growing and construction uses, decorticating the stems into the bast, fibre and hurd. So a few more bits of terminology for everybody to get their heads around. And it's going to be an exciting talk today. Today we have Joe Say from the Hemp to talk about hemp building, and we'll get to Joe just in a moment, but I just do have an announcement because we also had Dave Jordan speaking to us about the decortication system today. Unfortunately, Dave rang about 40 minutes ago and said that he was following a car through the Kaimais and the car went off the road across the field and through a fence and things. So he's offering assistance there. He's just waiting for them to be picked up by the emergency services. He may be able to get to us by the time, in a few minutes, but it is about a 40-minute drive from where he is to his office. So my apologies that Dave may be unable to attend today, but I'll try and fill in a few gaps and talk about some of the decortication side of things as well. But just to explain that it won't be possibly the biggest, deepest dive that we could have done. So my apologies for that. But it's going to be an exciting one anyway, because we do have Joe Say, and this is really good stuff because this hemp construction side is such a massive part of the fibre industry. So we're really, really, really pleased that Joe's made up some time to come to us and give us a bit of a presentation. So Joe, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you, and we'll try that screen sharing.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Richard. I'm delighted to be here, womaning the fort. I'm hoping that Dave might be able to join us as well if he comes out of his the road thing that he's helping out on, the accident. I hope everything's okay there. It's a real pleasure to be here today to be able to talk to you guys about hempcrete construction. And I just want to start off by saying I am not the world's greatest expert on hempcrete construction, but I've learned quite a lot, and I'm really happy to share with you what I do know. So I'm going to go into share screen mode, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go play. So just before I actually start talking a bit about hempcrete construction, I want to give you a bit of a sort of a context of why it's so important. It's really, really important for us to start building with hemp. So unless you've been living in a cave for the last 5 years, or you're the president of America, you will know that we are in the middle of a crisis for our planet. And this is caused predominantly by rising emissions of carbon dioxide. So this slide here is of Japan last year. Obviously pretty horrific, but also China is this week, it's China that's being flooded with devastating impact. And this is a result of climate change. And this was Nelson last year. So I'm living in Nelson. We had wildfires all around us, and obviously Australia was devastated with wildfire. So this really brought it home for me and for my community here that, New Zealand is not immune or somehow isolated from the impacts of climate change. It is happening to the whole planet. It's very, very scary. So the energy required to construct, heat and cool buildings is the fourth biggest cause of carbon dioxide emissions on our planet. And concrete, you can see here these guys working on producing a slab of concrete. Concrete is the most widely used construction material in the world, and it's responsible alone for 8% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. Build yet another slab concrete building, which we've got quite a few going up in Nelson at the moment. So if we switch from the climate crisis to New Zealand's housing crisis, I will be giving you some good news in a bit, don't worry. But the New Zealand Building Industry Act of 1992 states that cladding of a new build house only has to last for 15 years. And that's why this woman is looking like she's looking. Yep, cladding on a new built house only has to last for 15 years before it fails. And then it has to be taken off and it has to be replaced. The structure of the house or the building only has to last for 50 years. So this is obviously bonkers. As a result of this crazy legislation, particularly around the area of the cladding, we've got 80,000 homes in New Zealand that have got leaky home syndrome. And this is when the moisture gets in from behind the cladding because the cladding fails and it causes mold to grow and rot to set in, and the timber frame rots. And it's going to cost at least $47 million to fix the leaky homes that we've got in New Zealand. And this is a typical example. Literally, the house is rotting away. And houses built before 1978 in New Zealand are mostly uninsulated, and they're used as rentals. So it's the infants, younger people and the elderly people whose health really suffers from living in these cold, damp houses. And this year, yes, landlords do have to start putting some insulation into the ceilings and underfloor by law, but they don't have to insulate the walls. And there's actually quite a lot of ways in which landlords can get out of insulating properties. So if the landlord or the landlady does insulate the house, they're probably going to use pink formaldehyde coated bats. These fiberglass bats, they're held together by formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen, and they can leak out toxic gases, and they slump after a couple of years, and so they lose that R value anyway. So this picture makes me feel very nervous for that little kid. Okay, so enough of the doom and gloom. I know that's a bit heavy to start with, but we've got to understand why is it so important to talk about hempcrete? Well, there is a solution that addresses both the climate and the housing crises, and that is building with industrial hemp. That's why I'm so passionate about it. So Australia, this is a picture of an Australian house that you can see. Australia has at least 160, if not 170 hempcrete houses by now. New Zealand has 5, just 5. We have got a couple more that are being started at the moment, construction-wise. But as you can see, we are way behind Australia. We're way behind England and Canada, and America's coming on board, Poland, France. They've all been building quite extensively with hempcrete. This is a picture of a housing development called the Triangle. Kevin McLeod built this development. It's 42 hempcrete houses in my hometown of Swindon, back in the UK. And Kevin McLeod, he says that building with hempcrete is a no-brainer. And you can see that they look really contemporary. They don't have to look like, to use a derogatory term, hippie houses. They can look very smart, and they do look very smart and very modern hempcrete houses. And so the government has made a commitment to us as a whole country being carbon zero by 2050, but they've also said that new built houses have got to be carbon zero by 2030. Now, that's not very far away. So how are we going to start being carbon zero with our new builds? It's not just a question of putting in double glazing and starting to insulate our houses here in New Zealand. We've actually got to use building materials for the whole body of the house. And those materials have got to be carbon zero. So, how's that going to happen? Well, here's the answer. This is a beautiful field crop of industrial hemp, which can't get you high, if you remember. So this field of hemp has got less than 0.3% THC in it, which is the psychotropic aspect. This is industrial hemp, which has been legal to grow in New Zealand since 2001. And I think this is down in Ashburton, where Midland Seeds have been growing really large amounts of hemp for the hemp seed. So as you know, hemp seed, well, you might not know, but hemp seed is an excellent source of nutrition. And anything that can be made from petrochemicals, cotton or timber can be made from hemp. It's pretty much, there's pretty much anything. You can make anything from hemp, from the fibers, from the seed, from the oil. So that's why it's such a miraculous plant for us to be, working with. And just to put it in context, if you think that this is kind of some very alternative, hippie, wacky thing still, BMW are using hemp fibers in the bodies of their top sports cars. Henry Ford, you might know, one of the first cars that he built it with hemp as part of the body, hemp fiber body. And he also produced a biofuel, which he ran that car on. There's great pictures of him and another guy slamming into this car body to try and break it, and it doesn't break. It's the strongest fiber on the planet. So a hemp crop takes 4 months to grow. And you can see here, this is the stalk, and you can see on the outside these lovely, almost kind of networked bast fibers. So those are the external fibers, and that inner stem, the inner part of the stalk, is what we call the hurd, H-U-R-D. Sometimes it's called shiv, S-H-I-V. So if you get confused, it's just got 2 names, but generally we refer to it as hurd here in New Zealand. So to get those two those two products, the bast fiber and then the hurd, as 2 separate products, the crop has got to go through a process called decortication. And that's what Dave Jordan and the Hemp Farm and New Zealand Yarn, that's what they're building down in Christchurch. They're building a decortication factory as we speak. Very exciting, game changer for the New Zealand industrial hemp industry. So I'm very excited about that. So yeah, so the external bast fibers, they can be used to make plastics, paper, textiles, carpets, rope, surfboards. There's an aeroplane being made at the moment from hemp fiber, and it's the inner part that we make, that we use to build with. So hemp hurd, once it's dried, it gets delivered to the building site, and it is mixed with a lime-based binder, lime and water in a concrete mixer, generally a pan mixer. And then once that has been mixed, it is loaded into temporary formwork or shuttering, which sits either side of the frame. So the frame is just a standard kind of frame that you would be using to use with any cladding or walling product. But what we do is we put the shuttering on, formwork, think of it almost like a mold, for like a cake mold. You put you can hand place or pour the hempcrete into that temporary shuttering. It gets left on for a few hours, and then the shuttering is taken off. So it's left to sort of set for a few hours. The formwork comes off, and then it takes about 6 to 7 weeks for that hempcrete to actually completely dry out. And once it's been dried out, so this picture, you can see obviously the inside of a house. And you can see there on the right-hand side, it's kind of raw state where it hasn't been plastered. And then you can see just around the corner where it's white, that is also a hempcrete wall, but it's been plastered. So you can actually get both effects. You can leave it raw and organic and have that sort of very delicious raw look. I really love it. But you can also have a crisp, modern plaster that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that and any other walling product. On the exterior of the house, we also plaster that with lime, and a thick coating of lime plaster makes sure that it's watertight. So as I said, it's the frame of the house that is the load-bearing aspect. Although hempcrete does have some load-bearing capacity, it's the frame that will actually be taking the structural load. And you can see how this is a great picture because it's a cross-section, and you can actually see how the hempcrete has been set around the stud, around the wall. And generally a wall is going to be about 300 mils thick here in New Zealand. And as I said earlier, it's a monolithic system. So what that means is you don't have to put an external cladding product on the outside of a house, and of a hempcrete house, And you don't have to put an internal cladding product like gibboard on the inside of the house. It's a monolithic one product solution, apart from being plastered, which is obviously adding something to it, but you don't have to add another cladding material. If you chose to do that on the outside for aesthetic reasons, that's entirely up to you, but you don't actually have to. And of course, that would be adding extra cost to your build. So why build with hemp? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm just assuming that you've asked. One of the main reasons why we want to build with hempcrete is going back to our climate crisis and the fact we're about to explode or be flooded as a planet. Hempcrete absorbs carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere as it's growing, and also once it's made into hempcrete. So it's actually a carbon negative building material. You remember we talked about the government, New Zealand government, committing us to being carbon zero on our new builds by 2030. Well, hempcrete's actually a carbon negative building material. So what that means is it's like a carbon sink. It's sucking out more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere than it is contributing to it. So this is a warehouse in the UK, and this is made from hempcrete, and it locked away 125 tons of carbon instead of generating 400 tons of carbon if it had been built from concrete. So it's sequestered 125 tons out rather than generating or contributing 400 tons. So just to give you a few figures, 1 hectare of hemp sequesters 15 tons of carbon dioxide as it's growing. And 1 cubic meter of hemp lime sequesters 300 kgs of carbon dioxide. So that's a significant amount. Now, hemp buildings, hemp houses have got excellent insulation and thermal mass performance. So it means that there's naturally a high R value. And of course, it depends on how thick it is. But in this country, in Nelson, if I build a 300 mil thick wall, it's going to give me an R value. I think it's 3.8. So it's, it's really high. And I think the code is only something like it's only required to be 2.2. So it's got this very high natural insulation R value, but it's also got a really good thermal mass performance. That means that it's got the ability, partly because of lime, but it's got the ability to absorb temperature or heat and then release it back into the building. And so what this means is that there's a very stable temperature inside of a hempcrete house. You need minimal heating, minimal cooling, and of course that's also contributing to the fact that there's a much reduced carbon footprint for each of the buildings. This is a beautiful Australian hempcrete house, and in 2018 it won the National Green Smart Award, and it's a beautiful home. So additionally, apart from that thermal mass, the thermal comfort performance, hemp walls have got the ability to naturally absorb and release back moisture. So they've got a really good and quite unique hygroscopic capacity. So mold, condensation, leaky home syndrome, not possible with a hempcrete house. And that will be beautiful music to the ears of a lot of Kiwi people who are living in damp, cold houses, as we talked earlier about the leaky home syndrome. So really a hemp wall, a hemp building, a hemp home, it's actually kind of breathing. So it's got this ability, this natural ability to self-regulate and to breathe. So it means that it's one of the healthiest homes that you can possibly live in. Additionally, it's totally fireproof. You can stand there with a blowtorch for half an hour. It cannot set fire. I've seen videos of this. And if you think about the tragedies that have occurred, when I think about the tragedies that have occurred in Britain with tower blocks and apartment blocks burning down and the loss of life that's occurred because the cladding has been highly flammable, it's a no-brainer. Why aren't we using hempcrete? It has also got great acoustic performance. It's termite and rodent resistant. There's zero landfill during and after the build. And a hempcrete house is going to get stronger and stronger each year, a bit like a fossil. So because of the lime and that chemical process that's occurring, a hempcrete house is getting stronger and stronger and stronger each year. So it's unlike, you know, the building code that we've got at the moment in New Zealand, which says, oh yeah, a house just has to structurally last for 50 years, then we'll just knock it down and build another one. A hempcrete house is going to last for centuries. In fact, there are hempcrete houses or hempcrete buildings from India and from Japan that are centuries old. And as you can see, you're never too young to start building with hempcrete. I love that shot. So it takes about 3 acres of hemp to build, or to produce enough hurd to build a house like this one. This is about 150 square meter house. So not, you know, not a tiny house, but not a big house. And so that would take about 3 acres of hemp. Obviously that's going to depend on the yield of that crop in that field, but it's a sort of gives you a ballpark figure. The cost at the moment is about the same as if you were building with bricks, brick and concrete. But that cost will go down as we are able to start using New Zealand hurd, which is very exciting. So excited about the decortication factory that's going to be opening up soon, which means we'll be able to produce our own hurd here in New Zealand, and we'll be able to build our houses from that. And yes, here's me working on the most recent house down in Wanaka, and that was really fantastic and fun thing to be involved with. And I'm going to be building a house from hemp in Nelson in the next couple of years. And I would love to build that with hemp that's actually grown in at the top of the south. But I would settle for just hemp in New Zealand. But if you're planning on, or you think you'd like to grow hemp at the top of the south here, please let me know. I'd love to build my house with hemp that's been grown locally. And here is a picture of Mr. Antoine, also working on that house. Now, Antoine is going to be building hemp tiny homes in Christchurch, and he's kind of getting himself geared up to be doing that, which is super exciting as well. And you can see that it's a pretty relaxed process of putting the hempcrete there into the shuttering. That black sort of product that you can see there is the temporary shuttering, and it's just a pretty relaxed, nice environment on that building site. So if you'd like to find out more about building with hemp in New Zealand, we have a small fledgling group called the Hemp Building Association of New Zealand, HUBA NZ, and we've got a Facebook page, and very soon there's going to be a website and that will be announced on that Facebook page. So please do feel free to join as a member on the Facebook group, and then we can keep you informed. And the company that was building down in Wanaka, they're called Urquhart Construction. So I would really recommend you check out their beautiful website, and you can see all the pictures of the Wanaka built home, and they're just starting to build another home down there in Wanaka. And also a really good site to look at is hempmasonry.com.au, and that's a beautiful site full of amazing resources. It's one of Australasia's leading hempcrete construction sites. So I'm really happy to take questions when it's an appropriate time to take questions, but until then, I will say thank you for listening. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Jo. That was an amazing deep dive into the hemp industry in New Zealand in regard to construction. There is a couple of questions that we do have come up, but I do want to acknowledge that Dave is with us. So that's a great thing. Thank you, Dave. I will we'll just do a couple of questions with Jo, Dave, and then we'll come back to you. So one question from Floyd was, who makes hemp houses in New Zealand?
Oh, good question. Well, the ones, so Urquhart Construction, they are pretty much, as far as I'm aware, the only building company that has actually already built a hempcrete house, and they're in the process of building another one. They are great people. Lockie and Joel, great guys to have an initial chat with. The rest of the houses that I'm aware of, and there's one up in Manganui and others in Taranaki, they've been basically self-taught builders. They might have gone and done a course somewhere, but Australia at the moment is our main source of hempcrete construction training. So I know that Joel and Lockie went over to Australia to work with Clara at the Hemp Masonry Company. That's how they learnt. I know other people from New Zealand have done that. So we will be the Hemp Building Association of New Zealand. We will also be running hempcrete construction workshops soon. And again, so if you look on the Facebook page, and we'll then on the website, we'll definitely be listing our workshops on that. So in terms of, building companies, I would go to Urquhart Construction. And if you want to have your own training, sooner rather than later, I would say hop across to Australia, but we can't go anywhere. So you'll just have to wait for it to be run here.
Right, thank you, Jo. And so we'll just bring Dave back in now.
Hey, Richard.
Hi there. Can you turn your video back on there, Dave? Right, there we go. Thank you, Dave. Well done. That's the last couple of...
Hey, Jo. How are you?
Okay. Look, Dave, we've got a couple of other questions for Jo,
Sure.
but
yeah.
Let's go through your part, because I think people would really appreciate understanding how to grow hemp, and then the decortication step, and then we can look at those end users and come back to Jo's questions, and there'll be some more for you, I'm sure. So are you comfortable to have a chat with us now? Is it?
However you'd like to do it. If you want to do the questions with Jo first, that's great. I'm happy to do that.
No, we'll go straight to you, Dave, because some of those questions will relate to both. So we'll have a good. So you have the floor, sir.
Oh, well, thank you so much. How many people we got on board here? Do we know?
There's the three of us, and there's 20 so far as attendees.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Well, I guess just a little bit about our journey, I suppose, and sort of if you're talking about growing hemp, really places to grow it in New Zealand. You can grow it anywhere, but of course we've had the headaches of how to process it from a lot of different regions, and it's pushed us to certain areas where we do have infrastructure in place. Otherwise, it's just been extremely problematic for us in the early stages, and I don't see that changing anywhere quickly. I think over the next 2-3 years, you might see some good movement and regional stuff actually becoming viable, but growing and harvesting is the biggie when it comes to tall crops for construction purposes and so on. Fibre crops for anything fibre. And if you're too far away from anywhere that's got that kind of infrastructure, then it does become a big problem. I think a lot of people who've tried it understand that. Certainly we've had a lot of goes at it in different regions. So at the moment we're concentrating on Canterbury for our fibre crops, and the reason for that is obviously we're putting in the break line or the decortication line there. So it just makes more sense that we've got the harvesters and we've got the dryers and we've got all of the balers and the things that we need close to the facility. So if like everybody wants to, we get calls every day, people wanting to grow hemp all over the country, but we have to be realistic until we find economic ways of doing that. And when it comes to moving bales, for instance, it's a hugely costly expense. Cost us about $60 a bale just to get one from the North Island to the South Island, for instance, so we have looked at all of those numbers and worked through as much as we can, and spent a lot of money on trying to critique it. At the end of the day, you've got to grow close to your processing, and that's just the way it is at the moment for us. Give you a bit of an update on where we're at with NZ Yarns. Everything's landed there, everything's on site, and at the moment we're just working through building all of the extraction units and so on for it, because it's quite a big unit. Have to be set up in such a way that it's going to work very, very well immediately. So there's a bit of work to do there. Thinking that it's going to be, talking to Colin McKenzie this morning down there, just seeing how things are at. it looks like early September that it'll actually be up and running. And COVID didn't help us with some of the engineering stuff that we had to do on site and close to the region. So that's kind of an update of where we're at with it. But what I do see coming is a huge future for the industry. It's absolutely massive what's coming, but we've got a lot of windy roads yet to get around. It's still going. So for anybody who is really interested in getting involved, just really consider timing, really consider location, and talk to us. We can help a lot. And of course, you know, the association helps a lot too in setting things straight. It's not an easy industry to be involved with, but it's a very, very worthy one. That's probably my messages today, Richard.
Very good messages as well, Dave. I think the you know, that last one about being worthy, it is, and the timing is so important. You know, you've really got to look at that, and it may be early. You know, this is why we're trying to do these webinars, and then the summit next year to look at those, look at the value chain, so people can identify where they can fit in. Because the growing is probably not too much of a problem because we have very talented farmers, but you're right around, it's too bulky to move this raw material. So you've got to have those decortication sites, those processing sites close to where you're growing. And so logically, it starts with Canterbury, and hopefully you'll be able to replicate that all over the place as soon as you can improve the economics. So who from that point of view, Dave, who's the people that you would like, and you know, if we met somebody over the barbecue over the summer, who should we be telling? Who are the industry type people that need to know, hey, there's fibre available, there's hurd available, that you would like to send samples to and that sort of thing?
Well, definitely construction, and that's a biggie. And of course, roading companies and so on. They're all. That's the type of industry that'll take bulk product, and that's what we need to boost infrastructure. You got to have bulk product going out. Fortunately, so far in this country, we've got a lot of interest in industry from different industries, whether it for fibre and for hurd. So that's a good sign. But the orders aren't there, and the reason the orders aren't there is because they haven't had enough of the product to play within their manufacturing processes. We've given as much as we can, and everybody's pretty keen on it. And of course, for us, it's all about our purpose. You know, the purpose of this is, you know, you got a world saying, hey, we need to change from petrochemical to plant-based. So that's the push. And like you said, Richard, timing is everything. And we are really, you know, Hemp NZ and Hemp Farm are very early in setting this up. And now we need the market to catch up. So each and every industry we have in the country can be involved in this. There's not one that couldn't be. I think construction, though, is awesome. I think that's one of the biggest ones. So I think Joe's taken an amazing lead there in getting the building association up and running. I think that's we see a lot of heart there. Once it is going and once we have got product, you're going to see a lot of building companies actually take it up. Smaller ones to start with, but also we're talking to the big ones as well. So there is more on that list, Joe, and we can go through that at some point. I couldn't even give you names right now. I mean, the emails just don't stop coming for different things. And so we're working with a variety of things at the moment. And we're increasing our team. We're increasing everything, but sales still aren't there for the industry because fully the product's not there. And of course, we do have some legislative stuff that our ministry has not helped at all with. And I mentioned the CBD is one thing, but the animal food sector is a big one. And we really do need to jump on that, because if we had the animal sector alone, where we could take product to, that would actually help boost the hemp economy as well, big time. No, I think we all know that. And
then back to that whole plant utilisation, very, very important aspect of it. And the interesting thing around the scale, depending on your industry. So, you know, you're going to, you know, if you went into some of these really large scale operations, they need tremendous amounts. So starting at those things that you can do, which is the construction, because that's the hurd, but then the bast fibre, you mentioned roading and things. Is that like a geotextile
yes.
sort of approach and things?
That's correct. Geotextiles, but insulation's another one. I mean, we've got the equipment's there ready to go. So once we actually start pumping everything out of the fibre line, then we can start doing those kind of things as well. And then when they start coming on the market, then the orders will start flooding in. And what I think will happen is we'll run out of fibre for a little while until we actually catch up again, because obviously the cost of doing, you know, of setting up and getting ready to go, there's a lot of money set up and or tied up in inventory, and that inventory needs to move. So it's pretty hard to sow more crops when you're still got inventory and you're trying to get through that. So there's a balance, and we saw that. If you remember, Richard, you'd know quite clearly what happened in Canada when hemp took off in about 95. They grew and grew and grew a heap of it, and then the market wasn't there to take it all, so they had to cut back for a couple of years before they started growing bigger amounts again. But then it did take off because the word was out, and I'm not talking about fibre over there, I'm talking about food actually. They're only just getting into the fibre now, whereas us in New Zealand, I mean, we're all jumping on the whole plant utilisation, which I think is the right way to go. But we've got to get the market to catch up to industry sort of charging ahead on the farm now.
That's it. And the food one is a good example. As you said, that Canadian boom and bust, you can actually see their cycle. It was a tremendously, cyclic way that they did things, which isn't great in the sense of the farmers get all excited, then the next year there's no market, so they don't grow, and that puts farmers off. So we need to sort of really work together a little bit, or the big companies, the Midlands, yourselves, the Carfields, really consider these sort of implications for those farmers. But it's just on one topic around, because we did say in this episode, Dave, that we would talk about the growing of fibre, which is different to growing of the seed. And you've mentioned about the harvesting. Did you want to just talk about maybe some of the agronomic bits about growing fibre, but also the retting process? Could you introduce that to our audience, please?
The retting process, did you say?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, so for years we tried doing dual crops, which was the seed and fibre. And we still believe that we are going to go back to that. But what we did last year was we grew specific fibre crops and we harvested them before the seed even appeared. So the flower was just there, and you just got a few little seeds starting to appear, and that's about the time to take a fibre crop. But you've got to, for the decortication line, length of stalk needs to be no more than about 600 to 700 millimeters long. So it's a tall crop, but you've got to cut it down, depending on the kind of decortication line. But most of them you need to have a shorter fibre to go through that, which is typical to the one we're putting in the South Island. And so what that means is harvesting of a tall crop, that crop needs to be cut into those pieces at the time of harvest. So, and laid on the ground for at least 14 days, depending on moisture in the ground and moisture in the air. So we've had to, through Carfields, bringing Carfields on board to run the Hemp Farm Grower Program has been instrumental to us, and they've been awesome. But we've had to bring in new equipment from Europe to handle those fibre crops so that we can cut them back to that 600 as we're harvesting. And these are the challenges that we've had, you see. So, just a chopper on the harvester, you $250,000 just for that piece of machinery. And that's not the harvester, that's just the chopper. So, and it's the type of machine that can actually handle hemp fibre really, really well, just like scissors to cotton, basically. So, and we've only got one of those at the moment, and that'll change as we grow. We'll get more of those machines in different regions and so on, and that's what we have to do. So, it's as far as retting goes, 14 days minimum, sometimes a bit longer, depending on what the product's going to be used for as well. But if it's retted pretty well, it's quite black when it's on the ground when it's retted correctly. And there is a chart that, if anybody needs a chart, we've got a chart that shows from green fibre right through to black fibre, and it shows the progression of that retting process as to where it's ideal. But generally, if you grabbed a stalk and you twisted it and the fibre came away from it, that's what you want. You want the pectins and glues that are holding the bast fibre to the hurd to release, so that fibre can come off easily. Some people will remember we trialled for years the D8 out of Australia, and we just kept on having breakages and things going wrong with it. So we knew we couldn't rely on that machine until they've done more work with it. And that was designed to do longer fibre and green fibre. But then at the end of the day, we found also that with that fibre, you had to then degum it, which is traditionally a chemical process, and a very bad chemical process. So we didn't want to go down that road. We know that we've got to change what we do for our environment. So we've gone for the retting, which breaks down those glues a lot easier, and the pectins. So I'm hoping that answers your question a little bit.
Absolutely. So, you know, you're using the environmental, the dew and the moisture in the air to break down those glues. And, you know, the great study about that would be what sort of effect does it have on the follow-on crop for a New Zealand context? And these sort of understandings about how hemp fits into that rotation are very important, because also in the farming scheme, you'd have farmers wanting to get in there real quick to plant their follow-on crop. And so, you know, harvesting fibre early means that, you know, if you were doing for seed, you're both re-sowing at about the same time, just about, and things like that. So there's some interesting stuff going on in that space. But we're just going to jump to Jo for a couple of questions that we had post her presentation. One, Jo, was about brands. Are brands still working on building hemp homes? It's a bit of a interesting question. Brands are one of our Crown Research Institutes, for those who aren't aware.
I know that there were builders, hempcrete builders on the east of the North Island that we're trying to do some development through brands. And I think this is bringing up a really interesting question about, you know, how do we actually get some specification for hemp building products. At the moment, the individual person owner who's building with their own on their own site, they will establish a relationship with a local building inspector through their local council, and through that process the house can be made code compliant. So the 5 houses that are in existence in New Zealand, they have all been signed off, and that's been done not through brands and not through using products that have been certified by brands, but it's actually through in the building code there is a section called acceptable solutions for walling. There's acceptable solutions for various things, but the acceptable solution for walling, that's how you can basically build with anything. You just have to prove to your building inspector, so that the work is signed off, that it actually conforms to the building code. So in terms of just one-off houses, that works, and it can work. It might be a bit of a daunting prospect to a builder to say, well, you're going to be the first person. Like when I build in Nelson, me and my team, we're going to be the first ones to actually grapple with the Nelson building inspectors and to actually prove that a hempcrete house can perform to code. So the way that we're going to scale up, and Dave, just following on from what you were saying, in terms of how do we start, you know, really scaling up the use of hempcrete and the demand for hemp, rather, the use of hemp and the demand for hemp, we've got to get the big boys and girls on board. And so my vision is that the likes of Jenny and Holmes in 5 or 10 years' time will be actually offering hempcrete built houses. Now, the only way that that's scaling up on that commercial level is going to happen is going to be through certification, through brands, and actually having a product that is going to be uniform throughout the country. So if you know, theoretically, if you go to Mega Mitre 10 or Bunnings, if they're still in existence, you know, can I go there and buy my binder for my hempcrete house? If I'm going to buy prefabricated panels, have they got a certification standard on them? So that work has got to happen. We've just started to very slowly move forward with that via the Hemp Building Association of New Zealand and other people that are coming on board. But yeah, we need to get brands on board, and we need to get that sort of certification of hemp as a building material. We need to get that moving forward. Otherwise, we're just going to stay with this one house here, one house there, and we're not going to be able to scale up.
Right, thank you, Jo. And that scaling up again keeps coming up as a common theme. There was another question around the hempcrete blocks here. There is companies in Canada, just Fibre, who do a block and put 6 pins in it, and they have all the holes for your conduits and things. And that 6-pin system makes it a bit of a Lego sort of effort, and that gives it some structure as well. So blocks are an option. In England, the Marks and Spencer's distribution warehouse use a series of panels, which again could be a different way of getting certification because you're making them in a factory rather than on site. So there's going to be a number of ways to get that.
That's right. Yes. So I thank you for reminding me that. So prefabricated panels is definitely a way to go for us, but that will definitely require some certification going on. There are different ways of using preformed blocks. That's definitely another way. And you can also spray hempcrete like you would spray concrete. So there's definitely, you know, a variety of different ways of using it. It doesn't have to just be the slower paced hand tamped down method. So yeah, definitely different options there.
Okay, Richard. Just on that, the panels, we've had conversations with a lot of pretty big companies, sort of mostly out of the States actually, who are getting very heavily involved in the panels and blocks. I think you'll see a lot of stuff coming out over the next few years. Well, actually, hopefully sooner than that. But I just one thing too, the scale of the hemp industry is going to grow due to compliance. And there are, like, all the big companies at the moment are putting their hands in the air going, we've got no way of complying to what's coming after the signing of the Paris Accords. And I say this so many times that most big companies now are employing sustainable teams, and they're all going, how are we going to comply with what's coming? And that's probably the best thing we've got on our side at the moment for this industry.
And amazing, isn't it? Because now actually that makes it even easier, because you try to contact the board of directors at Fletcher's. No, we can go straight to Laminex Sustainability Department, and then they say, oh wow, that's just what our medium density fibre board looks like, that insulation material, before they compress it. So it's like, okay, we'll substitute it with hemp, not hard. But you're right, and Joe mentioned this as well, the 2030 date as a compliant date, so some of these things for the construction can't wait until 2050. They've got to be well underway, and so it makes it a perfect storm. Consumer, pull and some legislative requirements would really help us. And this is a question that Rebecca's asking as well. Hi there. What are the main barriers to building with hemp now? What's preventing widespread adoption? Now, is that a supply-demand situation in a lot of cases? We've talked about the compliance side, which, as Joe's mentioned, you can do one-off and things. But
yeah, so Rebecca, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think one of the main things is actually education, and I was going to refer to this earlier when, with regards to everything in the hemp industry, the industrial hemp industry, it's education. Because when I do a talk about hempcrete construction to people that don't know anything about it, at the end of the session, everyone's saying, well, why aren't we building all of our houses from hempcrete? And it's like, well, yes, why aren't we building all of our houses from hempcrete? Rebecca's question. It's because, historically, we are behind, unfortunately. We've had to use hurd that was imported either from Australia or from Europe, but that is thanks to Dave and his amazing work, is about to change, because we're going to have a decortication factory in Christchurch. Woohoo! So excited about that, Dave. Yeah. So we're going to be able to build our homes from hurd. So we'll be able to produce that hurd in Christchurch. And again, it's about, well, where can I go to train to learn how to build with hempcrete? Well, look, you've had to go to Australia so far, but now we're going to start establishing those workshops here in New Zealand, so people will be able to learn here. And we're just about to start filming a full-length documentary about going from the seed to the sanctuary, from the ground to the finished house product. That kind of educational material needs to be available, not just to the public, but to builders, to architects. So every chance I get, I speak to architects and building designers and students of, civil engineering, whatever, to sort of say, have you considered building with hemp? And they're like, didn't know you could build with hemp. So once people actually get turned on to it, they're like, well, this is a no-brainer, as Kevin McLeod says. It's a no-brainer that we should be building our houses from hemp. So we've got this 2030 deadline coming up. And as you said, Richard, we're going to have the likes of Fletcher's, who have dominated not only the building supplies industry, but also they had a big hand in the building code drawing up. And at the moment, that is just simply, it's ridiculous. We've got a building code that says cladding only has to last for 15 years. We've got to get that legislation changed. We've got to change the building code, and then we've got to look at how are we going to comply with 2030 as a date for new builds. And we've got to go to government. I definitely want to go to government and start having discussions with the construction minister, with the housing minister, and say, look, how are we going to support the emerging industrial hemp industry, industrial hemp construction industry, you know, specifically? How can we do that? Where can we find this money? Where can we find the support from?
Well, good luck with that one, Joe, going to government. Quite seriously, we've banged on government's doors for years, and they are like this. They don't want to know about hemp, unfortunately, but business to business is definitely the way to do it. And I think that the consumer, once there's a product available, the consumer will say, this is a no-brainer, just like Kevin McLeod, and they'll purchase it and they'll get on with it. And that's why we've taken the approach, let's put the facilities, the infrastructure together. You know, it cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to set up the food facility at Hemp Farm and the fibre facility at NZHIA. And don't forget, this is not just even about only hemp creep. So your curtains and your carpets, because of NZHIA, are all going to be done with hemp, and we'll be blending that with wool. So we can't do the fabric here yet, but we can make the yarn and send it overseas to be turned into fabric. So you'll be able to have your curtains, your linen, your carpets, everything else out of hemp as well, which if you look into it a bit more, I know we haven't got much time to talk about that side of it, but that is an incredible side of it, what's coming there. That's so exciting. The textile industry is, I don't even know where to begin. That's a whole other session again.
This fibre is a massive spot, and it's about time that people started, you know, taking it seriously, because there's a massive opportunity back to scale. And you're right, Dave. I mean, when you start looking at the roofing and the insulation and the medium density fibre boards and the flooring, and then you even start thinking about, well, our hemp seed oil is a great nutrition oil, but once it goes into an industrial oil, then it becomes a paint or a stain, or, you know, exactly, all these other things that again reflect back into construction. So it's a wonderful thin edge of the wedge, because it's going to be a huge user of raw material in a very simplistic way, the hurd, for example. So it requires quite a lot of scaling up, which then can be applied into these other, these other markets as well. Dave, there was one question for you. What is the name and location of the company setting up the Decorticator? And what is the output per hour? Do you design your own or source elsewhere? So you mentioned NZHIA, it's in Christchurch. Any other comments on those other sort of parts of the question?
Yeah, so Hemp NZ did a deal with NZHIA and bought shares in the company, and then Hemp NZ bought the equipment out of the Northern Hemisphere, purpose-built machinery, already proven, already tried and proven, already used in a couple of places of the world. So we went over there and looked at the machinery being built. 8 40-foot containers of the equipment landed in Christchurch about a month ago. And right through that COVID whole thing, that everything was still moving forward. And so it's going into the NZ yarns building. We're also obviously doing a whole lot of wool yarn down there. And so we're going to be blending wool with hemp. We're going to be doing hemp alone. We're going to be doing, obviously they'll continue to do wool alone. But what's happening globally with that side of things, with the yarn thing, is big. It's bigger than anybody can imagine, actually. Trump would say that, put it that way. But that's the deal that's going on in the NZ yarn building. So it's a big facility. You're talking about a 13,000 square meter facility to house all of this equipment that is going to be pumping out product at the end of the day. So yeah, the textile side of it's huge, to be honest, really big.
And this is again a great opportunity to complement our other primary industries, our other fibre industries, the wool industry, and then, you know, Joe's saying that we need a structure to hold the roof up, so that we still need the wood, we still need the pinus radiata.
Well, that's right. And if you look at the wool industry, you know, the wool industry has been in trouble in this country for years and years and years, and nobody can deny that. I mean, I was just reading articles the other day about the wool industry and how, you know, and the government's trying to prop it up again, trying to help out. But it's the hemp industry that's moving it alongside the wool industry, and not just hemp either. Flax will come of age as well again.
Yes.
It's going to, especially European flax, because we can also process that at the NZHIA facility. So yeah, watch the space as this grows and grows. In fact, that's going to get a proposed name change and everything to reflect what we're doing there. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Definitely, and I mean, back to the wool equation, I mean, there are some successes. I mean, merino is a differentiated product, so there's that high value add, all birds and things. But yeah, the wool top, it's very much a commodity, and quite a lot of our theme in these webinars has been around trying to differentiate ourselves away from a commodity. I mean, with fibre, you can possibly go to commodity because there's a number of value-added steps, as you've described. If you can convert a stem into a bast fibre, comb it all out into a yarn, that's a lot of value add.
Yeah.
And because we don't have a big weaving system over here, we do knitting and things, but a lot of our manufacturing's gone at the moment, and it'll come back. But that bobbin in a container to China, then that's a valuable container being exported rather than a bulky raw material. So
that's exactly right.
Opportunities are really interesting there.
Yeah, see, we've also been very much now involved in looking globally at cottonization of hemp, and that's a biggie. So cottonization of hemp needs to be done before you can turn it into like a fabric, basically, getting it to that quality. Traditionally, it's very heavy chemical based, but of course, the purpose of what we're doing, we don't want heavy chemicals. So we've been working with companies around the world to come up with a non-chemical solution of doing this. But the other thing is that what's happening in the NZ yarns with the hemp and the fibre, with the hemp wool and the sheep wool together, there's only 6 places in the world that you can do that, and we're one of them. So it's actually a very unique situation.
Yeah. Cool. And then we've got to support that. New Zealanders have got to buy the carpet made from these products, or pay a bit of a premium to get things started. So, we've got to, as consumers, start voting for this with our consumer dollar as well.
Yes. Yeah. And talking about your consumers, what we're saying to manufacturers is, look, you need to be aware that there's going to be a little bit of a premium that it's New Zealand for a little while. And to think that because it's not traveling around the world, it's going to actually save money. It's not really the case yet, because we've got a lot of work to do within the industry on the ground to get yielding up, to get our processing, critiquing our processing, bringing in the scientists, the R&D. It's a massive operation. It's not just like grow the crop, put it through the decorticator, and then you've got a product. Every industry around that, R&D and science and all of that, all has to start playing a part, and every area has to be refined and critiqued. And the boards will be saying at the end of the day, well, that one doesn't work, let's not do that. But it's up to us to actually get out there and make it happen in the marketplace at the end of the day. But it's a huge economy. It's not just farmers and manufacturers and consumers. There's a whole lot of industry in between that as well. And I think that's reflected in a lot of the research and development that's going on, the university work that's going on. I think every university in the country is involved with hemp now, and excited as heck about it. So there's a lot of good future for it.
Definitely, there's a lot of engagement. As you said, every university, just about every Crown Research Institute in various ways is also engaged. And even some government departments, NZHIA, looking to help people that are ready to export or looking in that direction. And that's where a lot of, obviously a lot of focus has got to be, because there's a big dollar market out there that we can access. And it's, so exciting times, but a long way away from economies of scale. So there's still a considerable investment.
Sorry about that.
That's right. It was okay. It's not me. Some economies of scale are going to kick in, but we need to get to that point, and that's going to require this massive support and continued investment, and that's where people have got to sort of work out their role and where do they fit into these production chains? Because as you said, then there's marketing, there's distribution, all sorts of things happening. One last question on the decorticator, because there's ways of decorticating. In Rotorua and Taupo, you might even use steam explosion to do your decortication system at some point for some reason, I'm not sure. But hammer mill action has been quite a popular one. Is there any comments you could make on the production line that you've got coming in, Dave? What sort of process it takes?
Yeah, it's not a hammer mill at all. That's the thing about it. It actually separates it a lot easier, well, not easier, but a lot less damage to the fibre, put it that way. So it becomes a very good fibre for textiles and so on. A hammer mill, you're just damaging the fibre a lot more. It's still usable in geotechs and that kind of thing. It's still, there's nothing wrong with a hammer mill, but it's a bit more of a traditional, sort of an old sort of way of doing things. Not that it doesn't still have a place. The fibre line that we will eventually put in the North Island, Who knows? Could be something more along those lines, because we may not, we don't know yet, we may not need that same kind of unit in the North Island as we've got in the South, because that's more designed for the textiles as well. And of course, you've got the hurd coming from that too.
Awesome, yes, and hurd, and then you've got the traditional uses like horse bedding and things versus the hempcrete, which is a great scalable product. And then you know both bast fibre and hurd. Where does it go to next? We had a session on this sort of high and low tech, and you know the direction of travel for the industry on Tuesday, when we were talking about graphene and nanotech, and you know there's just such a wide range. Again, you know, 80 years of prohibition means not a lot of work's being done in this space, so there's plenty of things to do. But
well, just on that, the last thing I'd want to say is that, you know, you've got your David Attenboroughs and so many scientists around the world saying you've only, I think last year they said 12 years left before climate change was out of control, and whether you believe that or not, nobody can argue the state of the environment, and that's what this industry is really about, is cleaning up the environment. And those are the good reasons to get on with it.
Absolutely, thank you, Dave, for that was my question to you guys. What is the last sort of things? I mean, also I should acknowledge, Tracy's asked, will you be sharing contact info for both Joe and Dave, so I can ask you that, and then maybe put the email in when I send out the episode recording clip. And Dave and Joe, what role should government play? Now, bearing in mind that we've just done our time, so it's hard to get that into a short sentence, and they're frustrating. The bureaucracy in any country is frustrating, and they're all ass covering, you know, risk adverse, and no one's joined up. That's the observation I'll make. But Joe or Dave, would you like to comment on that just before we finish?
Well, I mean, I know I hear you, Dave, saying it's obviously very tricky. It can be a very tricky process, getting government to change and move on things. And yeah, as we've seen in the government's response to COVID, actually change can happen like that if there is the will there and the impetus. And I think that when we realize that we are just about to explode or be flooded, and we actually have to do something about this in the way that the government's had to respond to COVID, then actually I think things can happen very quickly. So hopefully we're not going to wait until we're just about to explode before that happens. But we need to get the government to actually endorse hempcrete construction. So that's what I'm going to be working on.
Yeah, for me, I've banged on enough doors at Parliament now. I understand where they're at. They don't want to get involved because it's in the too hard basket for them. That will continue until manufacturers and consumers say enough. We're not asking government for anything more. Helen Clark did the right thing in 2006 and signed off the hemp regulations. 2018, the hemp food regulations were set in place. Now it's up to us. And Helen Clark made the point in caucus at the time. And she said to her caucus, what do you think we should do about this industrial hemp thing? And while they were all humming and hawing, she turned to them and said, oh, I think we should sign it off and see what they can do with it. And I think that's the answer. It's up to us to get on with it.
That's it. And if we do want change, it can happen quickly, but there's got to be a political will, and that political will can be influenced by, as you pointed out, Dave, consumers and manufacturers getting behind it and saying, this is what we need. And, you know, and back to having a champion, you know, back in those, you know, Rod Donald, Annette King, Philip DeBuncle, Helen Clark, these people were willing to put their, you know, make a decision and stick to it and push it forward. And she's quite right. Let's see where they go. And there's talented people in the hemp industry, and they want to see this work. So critical mass is just around the corner, I think. And you know, it's going to be very exciting. And your processing line, Dave, is a massive catalyst for that, especially on the fibre side, of course.
Couldn't do without it, could we?
Yeah, oh, man, it's going to be a light bulb moment. It's going to go on for so many businesses when they get a bit of, you know, as you see, get their hands on a bit of that raw material.
Yeah. There's all sorts of companies. There's packaging companies, construction companies, you name it, plastic company. Everybody's talking about hemp now, so it's a good sign.
I never thought I'd be so excited about the construction of a factory, but I am very, very excited about the construction of this factory.
That's great, Joe. We'll have to take you on a tour when you're ready.
Can't wait. Yay.
And let us know when we can promote it on the websites and Facebook posts, Dave. You know, that's news to share. So I'm sure there'll be press releases galore, and that could be a catalyst as well. Because if they're serious about wanting to build houses for people that are homeless at the moment, what a great thing! You know, why not build them out of hemp and things? You know, because they can self-insure. They don't have to have the same process. They're their own landlord, sort of thing. So growing healthy homes is a massive part of the Fibre equation. So just in conclusion, guys, Dave, Jordan from the Hemp Farm, Hemp NZ, and numerous other hemp companies as well, thank you very much for coming and racing from the scene of the accident that you assisted with to join us today. Thank you very much, because I had some backup YouTube clips and things going on I was going to go to, but we didn't need to, because that conversation's been massive. And Joe, thank you for that great presentation on hempcrete and for participating in the call today, because both of you have added so many angles that all our attendees and the people watching this in the future will just be going, okay, the writing's on the wall in 2020. What do we do after that?
Yes.
Look at that big, beautiful smile on Joe's face. He's
And Crete makes me happy. What can I say?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Richard.
And thanks for everything that you do for the Industrial Hemp Association, Richard.
That's
You're
great.
brilliant.
Thank you all. Thank you.